Welcome to the Root of Our Health podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth, a corporate burnout in the fashion world turned board certified health and wellness coach, functional medicine certified health coach, speaker, and an all-around health nut. This podcast was created to educate and inspire you to live a healthy life mentally, physically, and emotionally by using alternative methods for prevention and healing. With a combination of solo episodes along with highly trustworthy professional guests, we get to the root cause of health-related issues to arm you with knowledge and tips for your well-being so you can live a life full of vitality no matter your age. Are you ready? Here we go. Welcome, Caroline, to the Root of Our Health. It is such a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for taking your time today.
Thanks for having me. Delighted to be here.
Yes. We are going to cover burnout in this whole, episode. But I want to first understand if you can give us a little bit of insight of your background, how you got started, and where and how basically got you into an expert in burnout.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Elizabeth, I'm going to go back a couple of decades just to give your audience some context, but I'll be brief. So I actually started my career as a professional opera singer and enjoyed great opportunities to travel the world and sing and build a musical career. And then I pivoted and I fell in love with the world of talent development and career development and worked my way through different organizations and nonprofit and higher education and even the corporate world, and love that work. Until I burned out. And I share that very vulnerably with you and your audience because I was a classic overworker, an overachiever. And I was definitely someone who was at risk at burnout because I'm that person that always goes above and beyond. And I realize now that's not a healthy thing. And since 2022, I've been in my own business. And one of my absolute causes right now is to help people banish burnout, but boost productivity and unleash their potential so they can live a life of vitality.
Amazing. Yes. It usually starts with our own story, right? So I'm going to kind of piggyback on that in terms of, yes, I was in the corporate world as well and, had burnout. And unfortunately, I made the decision to step away. But sometimes you don't need to, right? So the question is how do we understand when we're in that burnout stage? Like what are the signs, if you can let us know?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're asking about this because I want to give credit where credit is due. There's an amazing author who has become a friend who has been on my podcast. I read her work a lot. Her name is Paula Davis, and she is the CEO and the founder of the Stress and Resilience Institute. And I mentioned this because she has a brilliant quote that says, "You can't yoga your way out of burnout." And I absolutely love that. And I always credit Paula because it's so poignant. People often mistake burnout for, gosh, I'm just overtired. I didn't get enough sleep this week. Those are symptoms, but burnout is much more systemic. So it might be that you're overworking and you really don't have time to live your life or take care of your health. Yes, that's one. But it can also be that extreme frustration at work where things are unfair or politically charged. And I don't mean politically Democrat, Republican, Independent. I mean the politics that happen in an organization. I also think that it's an imbalance of resources and expectations, and it might be a misalignment of values. So we find all these other side effects, symptoms, if you will, being irritable, being frustrated, being angry a lot, not just occasionally. These things are really exacerbated and they impact your life and your career. So you're bringing them home. And if you work at home, you may have no boundaries at all.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fabulous. And it is. It's just basically, we do think it's us, right? And it's only us. And, yes, we want to do, for the most part, a lot of us, right, want to do the best that we can. And a lot of us are overachievers, especially if we are in a corporate environment. We do, we like what we do. And we basically want to show up for the most
Yeah.
part, right? I say for the
Yeah.
most part. But yeah, it is, the culture around us. We also have to understand how to maneuver,
Yeah.
and we're going to probably get into this in a little bit, but also the boundaries too, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it's the boundaries of, okay, well, this is the culture. I need to basically show up, yes, but where do I cut it off,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I want to mention another data point because I think it'll help this audience really understand that workplace does have a stake in this, right? They've got skin in the game, and we need to think all the leaders out there, all the people that have influence in their respective organizations, no matter what industry, need to take ownership of this. I really think we're experiencing, not only in this country of the US, but globally, a human energy crisis. And I
Yeah.
think that's really dangerous. But the data point that I wanted to share, Elizabeth, is that the World Health Organization has very clearly stated that burnout is a workplace issue, not a self-care issue. And I
Right.
think that's really important for this audience to hear. We've got to make work better so it stops debilitating us.
Yes. And so with the question that I just popped in, who has who can do that? Like, what, you
Yeah,
know what I'm saying? Like, typically it starts from the top down, right? So it's coming
yeah,
from there. It's, squashing. You're feeling the tight of, we need to make our, numbers, and you're feeling the squash all the way to the end, where they're literally, I think, just basically everybody is in burnout. But who could change?
yeah.
Like, who could affect this system?
Yeah, all of us. So let me be really clear about that. So for the leaders that are listening, you need to own the influence and the decision making that you have, and very consciously think about how you can make a better, healthier, sustainable workplace, because there is no business case for burnout. It's expensive, it's wasteful, and it's also unethical, in my opinion. We just have this burn and churn mentality that we're going to work everybody to the bone. And yeah, if they leave, we'll replace them. That's not only a good work ethic, it's not a good life ethic. But for those that may be in the rank and file and are not in a leadership role or not yet in a decision making capacity, you and me and you, Elizabeth, have the opportunity to really design what our life and career look like, and set boundaries and put healthy practices in place, and also diplomatically and appropriately say no to certain things. Because if we don't change this culture, it's going to get worse and worse. And it can't just be a top down mandate, as you said. It's got to be collective. We're doing a seismic culture shift.
Right. Right. Yes. We all have a hand in it,
We
right?
do. We do.
So, yeah, perfectly said. And so it's just a matter of, again, kind of going along with the times too, because, the
Yeah.
pandemic shifted a whole lot in terms of how we work. So a lot of people either like working from home, and now they have to be back at work,
Yeah.
and that was just a shift that I saw too, is just like, oh gosh, well, I'm nice at, I want to work from home, but now I have to come in, right? And
Yeah.
so do you
I
want to speak with that?
I do. I have
Okay.
so many thoughts about that. And
Okay.
look, I respect that different organizations have different values, and I'm not telling anyone what to do, but I am saying with certainty, and the data shows this, that the surveys that have questioned what people value the most actually prioritize flexibility even above salary.
Mhm.
Having that flexibility, this 8 to 5 or 9 to 6 workday came from the early 1900s, when we started the assembly lines, and we look at Henry Ford, who really put a structure in place. And then we had three different segments of work, right? The morning shift, the middle shift, and then the night shift.
Right.
That's antiquated. The world has changed. And let me also be honest and say, I get it. There are some people in certain professions that don't have the luxury of working home, like people in the healthcare profession, right? People in the service industry or the hospitality industry. I get that. It is unfair, and it's not equitable in that true sense. But we need to really reimagine the world of work in 2025 and beyond. I mean, look at AI. It's taking us to such different places, and technology is being leveraged. Our work style and our work practices are terribly antiquated. And I'll say one last thing because I can get on the soapbox.
Yeah,
These
please do.
companies that are calling people back, it's going to be ugly because so many people are leaving the workforce and they're voting with their feet, and they're saying, I'm out of here. I'm not going to do this. I am going to go to a more progressive organization that honors flexibility. And I do believe there's a way to do both. You can be flexible and still get extraordinary work done.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Is there a difference between how we address burnout, or how we address the workplace, between a small company, between a larger
Yeah.
corporation or a mid-size? What is the difference between
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I'm really grateful that you asked because I think a lot of people may be listening saying, well, yeah, that sounds great, but how do I put it into practice? So let's say you have a very large matrix organization, right? There are thousands of people that work there around the globe. They might have multiple offices in cities all over the world. I get that. That's a big ship to steer, using the metaphor. So they have policies. So what I'm suggesting for everybody, whether it's a large organization, mid-size, startup, or even a family business, right, that has maybe a dozen employees, experiment. You don't have to completely shift policies and protocol yet. Be flexible and try some things. I like to call out the design thinking process.
Mm.
Empathize first, see where people are, what are their pain points, listen to your employees. If you lose your star player, your business is going to feel that hurt. And if people leave, your business is going to suffer.
Right.
And let's also say that healthcare costs are skyrocketing because people are becoming more ill, more debilitated because they're overworking. So there isn't a one size fits all. But if we use this concept of let's experiment, let's see what maybe 3 months might look like with a flexible schedule or a no work Friday. I get it. It might seem drastic, but give it a try and then figure out what worked, what didn't, and what's next. Because
Right.
these unilateral decisions are really just so large and encompassing that we're missing all the nuances that we could be capturing. So, bottom line, experiment, try things, see what works, and help your employees understand we're testing, right? This isn't
Yeah.
locked. Let's
Yeah.
see what happens and prove that you're going to be highly productive with whatever flexibility we test.
Yeah, it's being nimble, right? It's being
Yeah,
nimble to whatever is going on in the country, in the world, and the shifts and things like that. It doesn't it's just it's just the cultural shift.
right.
But so the other thing that I had, my audience and me, and typically it's women over 40, right?
Yeah,
So perimenopause, menopause, we are going through even a hormonal shift,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah, I'm right
So,
there.
right. So then it's just a matter of, I actually did some research and a presentation in terms of how, menopausal women in the workplace, like, it's still a little bit of a patriarchal,
A lot.
and so it's just an understanding of how do then, now that the education in perimenopause and menopause is getting to light, right, so is
Yeah,
being more out there, how do women in this stage, in this
yeah,
transition stage, how do they show up? And yes, the flexibility of it, but
yeah.
what do you think that they could do to approach this situation?
Yeah, I'm so glad you're talking about this because frankly, we have to talk about it. Every woman on the planet will go through perimenopause and menopause, right? We
Yeah,
all experience
regardless.
different things, but nobody gets a pass, right?
Right.
And the good news is people like you, experts like you are talking about it. I follow several doctors who are experts in this area. And what's beautiful is we're now starting to research and study it more. Sadly, students in medical school, residents weren't even talking or learning about menopause. So it was the big mystery, right? And our mothers and our grandmothers never talked about it. It was this taboo subject and they suffered in silence. So happily, we're pulling the curtain back and saying, look, this happens. It has very significant, depending upon the woman, everybody's different, mental emotional and physical impacts on our body, which impact our lives and our careers every day.
Yeah.
So we're destigmatizing this. Whether you have a male or a female boss, it's perfectly fine to say, look, I need some flexibility, or I need some adjustment. I need some things. This is what I'm dealing with. You know, if you had a chronic illness or you have a condition, that's legitimate. So is perimenopause. So is menopause, right? This isn't some
Yeah.
affectation. Women are experiencing real things. And the more that we can honor that and think about how we can help women like you and me navigate that so we can be the best versions of ourselves in life and career, it's a better business case and it's a better human model, right? Let's honor
Yeah.
human beings.
Yeah. Yeah. No, again, grateful, you said it perfectly, basically. It is, we need to, this is a shift, obviously, in general, right? So we need to
Yeah.
step up in addition to listening. I think that's the key word in both areas, right? The company has to listen, or the executives or the leadership or the managers or whomever. And then we also have to listen to understand, it's not just us going in there, or just in general, like an employee going in there, like say, hey, I got this right, so you need to do X, Y, and Z.
Right. Right.
It is more or less, let's co-create, right? Let's get something together. And and just hopefully we could shift it, and
Yeah.
this will bring more productivity.
Absolutely. I want to share one other thing, if you don't mind, to pull
Yeah.
on the menopause and the
Yeah.
perimenopause. So I mentioned at the get-go that I started my career as an opera singer. And
Yeah.
in Europe, not in the US, but in Europe, the companies give women a wellness day if they have their period and have extreme cramping or debilitation. And we know that end of the spectrum too, early on in our womanhood, that can be really dramatic. And some women suffer terribly.
Yeah.
And there was no stigma, right? I mean, if you weren't feeling well, you weren't going to perform well. So the
Right.
companies honored that, and they said, take that wellness day, do what you need to do to be at your very best. So why aren't we doing it on the other end as we age and think about menopause, right? And perimenopause. And, this could last for decades, right? Women can start perimenopause in their early 40s and
Yeah.
might not be done with symptoms until their 60s. So it's
Yeah.
not like we can just say, well, it'll be done in a few weeks. It doesn't work that way,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I just think we have to honor humanity differently. And we're not looking for an excuse or a pass. We're looking for accommodation that empowers us to do our best work.
Yes. 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 We need that. We're human beings,
Right.
right? We're
Right.
not human doings. We're human beings.
Well said.
So yeah, let's treat each other like that.
Yeah.
Kind of shifting a little bit from women over 40, but I just want to understand, because burnout, I guess, could happen to anybody, but
Oh, yeah.
have you seen like a shift in terms of generational gaps? Like, are younger people now getting more burned out, or
Yeah.
older? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. So I'm in the trenches as an executive coach and a speaker, and I have clients around the world, and including some international clients. So it's fascinating to see the divide between the US and other countries. So first, I will say I'm squarely in Gen X, and my generation, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but many in my generation are fried. We're so burned out because our role models were baby boomers, right? That's the older generation. And I'm not dissing baby boomers. They were my mentors. They were my sponsors. They were my leaders. I learned from them. But that hard work ethic of get it done, do no matter what, we didn't even think we had an option for flexibility. Right.
Yeah.
And we burned the midnight oil. We wore the busy badge of honor. I had a boss that had a framed poster in his office that said, "I'll sleep when I'm dead." And he was incredibly proud of that, right? That was his badge of honor. So
Yeah.
it was just a different ethic. So I will tell you, that generation is certainly crispy. They are fried and burned out. I'm so proud of millennials and Gen Zs because they're saying, hey, wait a minute, I want to have a life and a career. So I'm deeply grateful for our younger professionals because they're saying, yeah, I'm not going to put up with this. And
Yeah.
they're looking for jobs that will accommodate them, that have flexibility. So again, I think that generational shift is a really good thing. Now, I often in my coaching experiences see some of the older millennials who are in their early or mid 40s who are burned out, and they're saying, you know what, this just is not working. And they're making conscious choices about finding organizations that honor their values better. And the
Yeah.
Gen Z folks in their 20s are saying, yeah, no, that's not going to happen at all. And
Yeah.
I'm really proud of them because they're helping make this change.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, back in the day when our parents would say, "Yeah, I trekked to school on
Right.
foot in 20 feet of snow." And look, and exactly that, or Gen X and other my friends, we were like, "School is closed when it snows? Like, come on."
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
But in general, yes, it is that work mentality, right? Because we grew up where our family, or the older generation didn't even go to like college.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all they did was work. So that
Yeah.
that mentality, kind of grew in with us. And
Yeah.
but then now the technology, I think, has also helped kind of relieve that a little bit in certain respects. I think it's a little bit more because then you have email, then you have, what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like, you have things that are at your disposal 24/7, and that kind of ramps things up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And
yeah,
may I add,
yeah,
I love technology. It's great. It has helped us improve life and career exponentially. And we're just seeing how AI can really impact our world in positive ways. And we have to really have guardrails there. So we use it ethically. But it's also been problematic, not AI in particular, but technology, because we're tethered to a phone
right,
and people can reach us at any moment of any time. So, one of the things that I see over and over again, and it's multi-generational, someone takes vacation, yet they're checking email or they're
yeah,
responding to a text and they'll say, well, I'm just trying to make sure there are no fires. So here's what I would say for all the leaders out there, your direct reports are following your lead. If you send an email on vacation or you check email on vacation, your direct reports think they have to do that as well. So you've
yeah,
got to set the tone, no matter how old you are, no matter what your generation is. And folks, we've got to take downtime. That's how we heal and recuperate and recover from the intensity of work. If we don't, generations of people are just going to drop, and that's going to disrupt the market too.
right. I mean, it's like, and kind of go a little bit back from what you said. Is I had have a coaching client who said the same thing. Like, yeah, my boss, she'll email at 10:30 at night or 9
Yeah.
o'clock at night, right? So she literally said to me, I feel like if I don't do that, then I'm not up, because she's also like a lead in, she has direct
I get it.
reports. So it's just a matter of exactly that, do as you say, or at least
Yeah.
be again, that go-to, or that
Uh-huh.
person that
Yeah.
puts a stop to it.
Yeah, and I'll give a very practical solution, right? If that leader says, "Gosh, I'm just working late at night because I had something go on, or this is my catch up," okay, then be clear with your team. Use your email scheduler. We've all got it. I don't care what
Right.
system you're using, Gmail, Outlook, and make that email go out at the next morning, right?
Yeah.
You have the technology, so leverage it and really be clear to your people. If something accidentally slips through at 9 a.m. or 9 p.m., excuse me, you don't need to answer it, because
Yeah.
the expectation without that clarity is, oh my gosh, I've got to have my phone next to my bed. And when it pings, I'm like a Pavlovian dog and I've got to go, get the email. So again, we've got to break the cycle, and we've
Yeah.
got to do and show behaviorally that we're honoring wellness and sustainability.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. So where could people, cause and actually, if you can give like another tip, just maybe one
Yeah,
more tip
yeah,
for,
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm all about the tips, and I'm out on
yeah,
the speaking circuit talking about this because I'm so deeply passionate about it, and because I burned out and I don't
yeah,
want anyone else to, right? I want to help prevent that. So the biggest thing and the most simple thing that we can do, I keep a calendar on Outlook. That's my email. And, at any given day when I was burned out, there was no white space, literally. And white space, I mean unscheduled. It was impossible to go to the bathroom. It was impossible to refill my water bottle. I didn't eat lunch for years. My keyboard was full of crumbs and splashes because I would eat at my desk if I ate anything at all. So we need to really go through our calendars and meticulously figure out, do I need to be at every single one of those meetings? Really? Can I create some white space? Does the 60-minute meeting really need to be 60 minutes? Can we get it done in 30? And Elizabeth, work expands or contracts to fit the time. So if you say our meeting's going to be 30 minutes, we have an agenda, everybody gets it in advance, I guarantee you can complete what you need to in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
We've got to have a mental shift. And that white space not only prevents you from perpetual meeting, it gives your brain a chance to breathe and think and reflect and be creative. And dare I say, do the work, right?
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
spending so much time meeting that we end up working at night and on the weekends because we don't have time to do the work. We're plowing through all the email. So again, big shift, or little shift, I should say, in this case, with big rewards.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. It's filling exactly that. It's making most of your time, productively. And then let's, maybe we can then add in some things that are good for our soul, self-care, so to speak, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, having unprogrammed time to think and process and be creative will help you be more productive.
Yes.
But it also regulates our central nervous system.
Yeah.
The problem with burnout, when we're always on, we're in fight or flight all the time. That's not good for our hearts, for our immune system. It's that almost constant adrenaline emergency room feel. It's one thing if you work in an emergency room, but if you don't, your workplace shouldn't feel like that all the time. There's got to be an ebb and flow.
Yeah. And, speaking of which, exactly that, we're talking about stress and burnout, but yeah, the stress is that chronic stress, right? That chronic, fight or flight or dysregulation, all of that. And so in order to get into that rest and digest, which again, you talked about eating at your desk, that's a cascade, right? There's a cascade that, kind of flows into everything else. So I, of course, I coach my clients in terms of, hey, can you take at least 5 or 10 minutes away from your computer and eat and be mindful?
Yeah.
You start with the small things, of course, but it's just, we got to get away from, I always need to be working. I always need to be on this. I always need to, all of this. It's going to be there. And then just one thing, I don't know if you coach this as well. I always say at the end of your life, what really is going to matter?
Right. I use this analogy. Do you want your tombstone to say, I'm making this up, right? Loving wife and mother, or do you want it to say she met her Q3 sales goals?
Exactly.
I mean, it's resume virtues or eulogy virtues, and we should have a mix of both. But one thing I want to share before we wrap, because I think this is really important. The fallacy is that when we overwork and we're incredibly productive, that we're doing high quality work, right? She's killing it. She's burning the candle at both ends. She's a workhorse. No, she's not. She's working a lot, but she's not working at a high level. And we need to really understand that we're doing our best high quality work when we have those breaks and we have a tempo and a pace and a time frame that honors our well-being. So no one out there can prove to me that they're doing extraordinary work if they're working 90 hours a week, because their bodies are trying desperately to just hold on for dear life.
Right. It's working smarter, not harder.
You nailed it. Okay.
Well, on that, where can people find you, reach out to you, get everything? Just let us know.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So my website is very simple, CarolineDowd-Higgins.com, all smushed together, no hyphen between Dowd and Higgins. And it's really the mothership. I've got my books, my podcasts, lots of great videos about speaking. And I do blog very regularly, and I talk about this. I write because I want to get the word out there. I'm so deeply passionate about people not only mitigating burnout, but just banishing it altogether. There's nothing good about burnout, and we all deserve to live happier, healthy lives.
Yeah. Yes. Great. Everything that you mentioned will be linked in the show notes. It is. It's just a basic, kind of let's step away. Stress is okay. Chronic stress, not. And then that leads into burnout. Amazing. I have one last question, but I first want to thank you for doing what you do in this space. This is extremely important, regardless of whether it's at work, whether it's just personal. I think burnout, we do as much, we do too much, right? And we don't know when to say no. And you speaking on it, and you kind of guiding and coaching, basically it is okay to say no. It is okay to have boundaries. It is okay to speak up, because without that, then you're nothing. You're not going to be productive. So
Exactly right.
I want to thank you. And last question I have is, what is either your favorite quote or any words of inspiration?
Yeah, as a Gen Xer, I can tell you at this point in my life, I've really learned that trying to please people is not a good thing, right? Of course, be kind to people, treat people with dignity and respect, but pleasing people is not going to help you get better. We get into a cycle and that of repetitive people pleasing, and I think that was one of my issues with burnout. I wanted my boss to say, "Gosh, she's doing great work." I was looking for that validation, and I really learned now that I can trust the great work that I do without other people telling me it's great. Of course, I look for feedback and developmental critiques, but that people pleasing cycle was dangerous for me because it enabled my burnout.
Yes, yes, so many of those out there. So please,
Yeah, be
listen
careful.
here, be careful. Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Carolyn. Again, it's such a pleasure to have you on. And to my audience, thank you so much. Take care. Bye bye. Okay.